In his opening address, Colonel Park mentioned that today many people are not sure that God exists. Let's look at the past. Consider Paul. Consider Peter. Consider any of the saints who knew the existence of God. Look at Albert Schweitzer or Martin Luther King. When people knew the presence of God, they were inspired to do great things. I believe that through this important discussion by Colonel Park, all of us can be inspired to do greater things for God and for humanity.
The first hour, we started off having an assumption that there is God. And throughout CAUSA program, you can see that the very existence of God is the core, it's the fundamental ground floor where we can launch this great crusade and movement. So the very question of existence of God is so important. And in this hour, we'd like to take about that question, God versus communism. The CAUSA worldview too, God versus communism. I'd like to quickly overview some of the things you have already heard to organize in your mind. We CAUSA consider there are four fundamentals of communism. In other words, the four basics the communist ideology is standing on. One is the absolute materialism. You have already heard from Bill Lay in the dialectic. The Marxism is trying to come up with absolute materialism relating to no creator. So this absolute materialism comes out of no God belief. And they believe the essence of the universe is matter. Fundamentals of communism, too. The law of dialectic. Universe is matter in motion. This is what they believe. The laws of motion are dialectical. As you can see here, the thesis and antithesis, confrontation of the two opposites. From this struggle and confrontation alone, the progress will come. That progress they call synthesis. This is the basic of all the Marxist ideology. Here I would like to mention the law. They said law of dialectic. When they say law, this has great deal of intimidating effect. They do not call themselves theories. Law. Universal law. For example, let's say I have a 3 pen. I drop 1 pen, 2nd pen, 3rd pen, going straight down the same direction. Why? The certain law is applying universally to every pen. The law, so-called gravity. They said it's a law, the dialectic is a law, it's not theory, applied universally. Furthermore, there's no exception. From this law, they come up with historical materialism, we're going to talk about that later, saying that communism is inevitable. This is what the historical materialism is all about. History moves under the law of dialectic. And as you can see, that they call it primitive communal society, started out with, then the slave society, feudalism, capitalism, socialism, and communist utopia. This is the law of history. Law of dialectic is in action. Therefore, communism is inevitable. This has a powerful impact to particularly ignorant people or naive people. The basic what they're saying, too bad you cannot join us. Whether you like it or not, communism is inevitable. You join with us, you are the winner. Tomorrow, you'll be a loser. This is a powerful, intimidating effect. And number 4, they based on another basic understanding of fundamental. That is, man is a product of his economic environment. You heard all that. When we summarize it, economic alienation is cause of evil. Therefore, the changing economic system brings regeneration of men. And elimination of private property brings ideal society or utopia. So here are 4 fundamentals of communism. 1, 2, 3, 4. Absolute materialism, law of dialectics, historical materialism, and man as product of his environment. These are the 4 pillars. When you organize all the thought you heard last 1.5 days, you come up with this is the basis upon which communism stands. By now, you know they are the lies. We have been exposing the lies. We say to no to all those. But the problem today we face, expose the lies and no to this all fundamental is not enough. We must go a step further. We must bring out to the world the counter-proposal. Solution. The solution can only come one way. When you consider communism as a darkness, how can you conquer the darkness? This room is dark. How can you conquer this darkness? One way to go. Bring the lights up. And light is the truth. Therefore, the counter-proposal must be based on truth. And the truth is based on Godism. We are saying Godism is that truth. For example, the absolute materialism. This is the first myth we have to break. How can you do that? To bring the lights up. Bring the truth. Bring the light. What is the truth and light? That is the reality of the existence of God. When you do bring up this light of the existence of God, then absolute materialism must be shattered. There's no room for it. When a light is up, there's no room for darkness anymore. That is the basic, fundamental way we CAUSA believe we can conquer communism from the ground floor. Then question arises, does God exist? This is truly an age-old question. Probably dawn of the human history. People asked this question, does God exist? And the 20th century today, in a modern man who already sent the man to the moon, in this classroom, asking same question, does God really exist? Problem with God here is question mark. The people are not sure. Not only those who are the atheists, they already denied or written off. There's no God. But more important, among the people who believe in God, the question mark is still strong. Some cases, God is look like this. In other cases, God look like this. For Marxism, communism look like this. What we need is God. In this clarity, without question mark, from which we can derive absolute value. All the human virtue, the value and the virtues come out of this absolute value. This is where Buck stops. This is where every individual in the face of the earth is answerable. Every life will be conducted in audit based on this absolute value, the ultimate answerable place where our ultimate buck stops. Then we have order. Then we have a system. Then we have unchanging value. So how can we know God? This is again a key question. How can we know God? There is no one simple way. There's a composite of many experiences might do the job. The CAUSA proposes common sense approach. We're not trying to be here, pose ourselves as a theologian or a philosopher. God is universal, then he must be universal enough to make sense among the people in the street, elementary school classroom. That approach, we call it common sense approach. This hour, I would like to take that approach. First, by science. Not only God, but there are many other objects surrounding us which is invisible, untouchable. What about air? In this room full of air. No one can see it. But a simple experiment such as blowing the paper like this, you know it, something in between the paper and the mouth. Simple experiment. How do you know there's air waves, electronic waves that convey the image of television, the radios, and communication? By scientific proof. We know such thing exists. Another way of knowing something, saying something invisible or untouchable, is by logic. Again, we can reason, we can logically reason the existence of God. For simple example, do you have your mind? No one can see the mind. I cannot show you my mind on my palm. But then you and I can deny I have my mind, you have yours. Because simple logic. It's not hand and my mouth making this sound. There's some invisible commanding post. The commanding every move I'm making, every word I spoke. I do have mind. I do know by logic. Another, probably the most important way of knowing God is by experience. Nothing can beat the experiences. The General Wellner has a little charming daughter whose name is Christina, who's taking probably third or fourth CAUSA seminar, one of the brightest young ladies I have ever seen. She knows the mother's love, father's love, parental love. Not because she studied at Harvard University, but because she experienced it from the day one of her birth. Once you know something by experiences, you do not need the science. You do not need the logic. Mother's love. You do not have to go to Harvard University to study the existence of mother's love. You know it by experiences. By the same token, we can say the same thing about God, and we know God either by one of these three, or most of the cases, combination of the three. We, one way or another, reached our conclusion, there is God. I'm sure that is what you are. I know most of you, all of you, have faith in God. You reach your conclusion there is God, either one or the three all combined the reasoning. So today, I'm not trying to do anything new. I want to merely refreshing your own experiences, your own logic, your own scientific reasoning, so that we can convey this conviction better to other people. This is the effort I'm trying to make at this time. At this point, let us again consider communism. The communism, their strengths and their strong point has been the point and emphasis that theirs alone is scientific. Communism alone is scientific. It's a Marxism, it's their trump card is. This is a scientific philosophy. This is a scientific ideology. They believe science is their ally. Particularly when the communism and the Marxism was put together in the 19th century, such as persons like Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, undoubtedly, they really overjoyed at the prospect. When the 20th century comes along, science will relegate God and religion into mythology. The 20th century comes, no one would ever even speak of God. That's going to be a 19th century superstition, they would say. So they proudly declare, in the word of Karl Marx, religion is the opium of the people. What happened when the 20th century come along? First of all, I would like to make this important statement. That is, the role of science is not to prove the existence of God. If you're trying to go to Nobel Prize winner, physicist, to say that you go ahead, prove the existence of God, is too much of an order. It is not their mission. It's not the scientist's mission to prove the existence of God. So don't misunderstand me. Here I'm standing and trying to prove God scientifically. That is not the role of science. However, today's science in the 20th century contribute great deal to understand the existence of God, particularly in modern physics. Dr. Paul Davies, who wrote the book, God and New Physics, there was a preface, he has written this paragraph. Right or wrong, the fact that science has actually advanced to the point where what were formerly religious questions can be seriously tackled itself indicates the far-reaching consequences of the new physics. Then he concluded by saying, in my opinion, science offers a surer path to God than religion. Dr. Paul Davies. The 20th century come along, the science made a marked advancement in three major areas. First area is the area of molecular biology. Again, I'm not trying to be biologist, which is I'm not. But all the research of the modern biology has come to the conclusion for one thing, that biology could not create life. Life is still a mystery. The life comes only from life. Factory could not produce life. So when we see all the living beings here on earth, what life? And when the Creator created living beings, then we can draw the logical conclusion that Creator is a living being. This is how, when we call God a living God, is very real. Even in 20th century modern science, living being. There must be out there living being, otherwise the living creatures could not come up out. I'm not going any further because that is not my role. But the second area that the 20th century science brought the marked progress, that is quantum physics, study of matters, and also the theory of relativity. So let us talk about this area, quantum physics, and the theory of relativity, just a moment. The quantum physics is a study of the matter, and they study the matter and break down into pieces. The matter become a molecule. You know it, I know it. Furthermore, the matter further broke down into atom. There was a time among the scientists' world, the atom is the final. It's a conventional definition of ultimate matter. There's something solid, something very basic, nothing further. You cannot go down any further. But that phase was broken when in 1938, first atom spread in Germany into a microparticle. As you know, 1942, first controlled chain reaction of atom was succeeded in a Chicago laboratory, resulted in 1945, first atomic bomb. Microparticle, such as proton, neutron, electron. And many scientists said, this is it, this is the final, no more. No, quantum physics say no. They further shattered the microparticle into pieces. Then they come up with what? Amazingly enough, there was an energy. The matter, conventional understanding of matter suddenly disappeared. The matter, something ended up in nothing, nothingness. Matter become a no matter or non-matter. At this point, the conventional understanding of Marxism, saying something solid is the essence of the universe. There always exists some matter, something basic in this universe. Not God created anything. There was something was solid. This particular understanding had turned into a 19th century superstition. Furthermore, Einstein brought this most famous theory of E equal mc squared. What does it mean? E means energy, equal to mass and the speed of light square. Energy and matter can be interconvertible and interchangeable. Energy and matter can be interconvertible, interchangeable. Matter can become energy. Energy can become a matter. That is the theory of atomic bomb. In between the change, incredible energy is generated. That is atomic bomb energy. Or the radio reactor is controlling that energy into peaceful use. So we can see that the matter we see as we know of, they come to the origin something incomprehensible, invisible, the energy out there, in the universe. At this point, we have to ask a question. How does energy become matter, the universe, and man? By accident? By random selection? Answer is no. I know this answer is no. Do you know why? Simply because, without being a scientist, we know at least one thing. There's a cardinal rule of science. That is law of cause and effect. Today's science cannot exist outside of this law. In order to have something happen, there must cause precede it. So how can all these things happen without cause? That is very unscientific statement. So at this point we'll see the reality of a first cause is becoming more and more apparent. So as you can see, what the science did 20th century brought the existence of God to the threshold. The looking to the future, saying that they're pointing there must be a first cause. Some cause the effect, make everything happen. In this respect, you know Albert Einstein. He is known to be the St. Paul of science, St. Paul of physics. He stated in his own writing, I want to know how God created this world. The greatest of all scientific minds ever lived on the face of the earth could not deny that God created. There's a first cause out there. And he said, I want to know his thought, purpose. The rest are detailed. This is the contribution. See, on the contrary to the understanding of the founding, the members of Marxism in the 19th century, they thought the 20th century will bring down the God and Christ into mythology. Instead, 20th century science brought the Marxism into a 19th century superstition. At this point, now the role of the science is over. They've done their job beautifully. Let us have logic take it over. Let us have logic move over. Philosophy, metaphysics take over. Let us invite your attention to the objects in this room: microphone, podium, your tables and a desk and chairs. Can you imagine any object in this room happen to be here by random selection? No. Answer is no. First of all, everything in this room has brought in by somebody. That person brought in because there's a purpose and necessity of it. You have glasses in front of you. The necessity, you might need a drinking water. Microphone is a necessity. I need to amplify the sound. So as you can see, before the objects, all the purpose and necessity proceeded. Then you have to logic, reason another way, another step. That is, there must be some mind other than the microphone, some user that reasoned the purpose and the necessity of the microphone. Microphone itself do not reason its own purpose. Somebody else did. Or some mind, reasoning by mind, did it. Furthermore, before this microphone ever come to this room, this microphone existed in someone's mind first. Before it become visible, there was an invisible form of microphone in someone's mind. So you cannot deny there was a mind above the purpose and necessity. Then what is the mind? Mind is comprised of three elements. That is emotion, will, and intellect. Combined together pose a mind. In this same logic, let us look at the universe and humankind. is indeed the intricate creation, most sophisticated creation. There is no way we could say this is the product of accident. No way all these universe, human being, caused by the accident. Accident always brings catastrophic situation. Universe and a human being has order, system, organization, discipline. These things cannot be done by accident. So by same reasoning, somebody purposed it. There was a purpose proceeded. You cannot deny that in your scientific mind. So then, prior to this purpose, there was some mind out there who have ability to purpose, who ability to think, ability to project, look forward to. That is a mind. That mind has emotion, will, intellect. Because without this three components, that mind would not do the work. So you can see, there out there, before the universe and humankind, there was a cosmic mind. We call him God. Well, there are many names for him. Japanese call him Kami-sama. Judaism call him Jehovah. Muslim call him Allah. Korean call him Hananim. Whatever the name you call him, you give him, it does make a difference. There's a one ultimate cosmic mind who purposed the universe and men. It's time then we ask, what is the purpose of the creation? What is that purpose? The most important thing today, we must realize the purpose of creation. Since not knowing the purpose of creation, so much confusion set in. This is the fundamental understanding. Why God created for the universe and men. It's truly a big order. In order to make sense in this particular hour, let me ask you another question. Why do you pursue your own goal in life? Whatever the goal it may be. We have great author, scholar, artist, political professional, teachers, mothers, fathers in this audience. And I happen to know already also we have 12 colonels. I happen to be one. And we have military career pursued. Right now, you have certain pursuit in your life. In pursuit in our life, probably can be divided into 4 primary goals. Either we pursue money. In business, we want to make money and rich. Become a millionaire. Nothing wrong with that. Pursuit for knowledge. Pursuit for power or certain authority. Or pursuit for honor. All good goals. So somebody want to become rich, famous, important, knowledgeable. Let me ask you, why? Why do you want to have pursued that goal? Why do you want to be rich? Why do you want to have a power? Why do you want to be famous? Why do you want to be knowledgeable? What is the bottom line? Answer is so simple, therefore you cannot think of it. Answer is quite simple. The answer to that, without any exception, is for the sake of happiness. everybody is working toward our emotional satisfaction. The bottom line is we want to be happy. We want to be satisfied. We want to be joyful. No one can deny that. Therefore, the human heart, the emotion, is the motivating force of all human action. Every single human action coming down to emotional purpose. They want to either achieve something so that they feel joy, happy, satisfied. What about God? God is no different. We are in a way thinking in that fashion because we are the second self of God. We talk about it more a little later. We are the image. How God emotion feel, we feel the same way. So we CAUSA come to the conclusion that the center of God's being is his emotion. Heart. The new term we're speaking. God's heart. Very seldom I hear here in America. We talk about a great deal about love of God. What is that love? Love of God. Where the love is coming from? Emotion. Heart. Without heart, there's no love. So, cosmic mind. Center of that cosmic mind is the feeling, heart, emotion. The purpose is engendered from this emotion. And that purpose is none other than emotional satisfaction of God. God himself wants to be happy, joyful, satisfied. God's emotional satisfaction. That's all. This is what God wants. Can you think of anything better, anything else we CAUSA want to know about it? But to us, to me, this is ultimate. God's heart is the motivation force of all creation. Then in order to achieve this purpose, there's a will, and God intellect. God intellect provides know-how. It's a know-how staff. The know-how that the God, it knows what the purpose and what the emotion wants. And the intellect provide to achieve that purpose through the knowledge, know-how. And a will provide the drive, action. That purpose can happen into reality. So as I said, God's heart is the motivating force of all creation. Urge of creation came from his heart. His urge to be happy, joyful, satisfied, fulfilled, that thrust God's will into creation. As I said, God's purpose of creation is joy and satisfaction. Then we must consider, however, some differences between God and men. For us, we have many ways we can derive the joy and satisfaction. Many material things can give us some joy and satisfaction, no question about it. Money can be a source of joy. Knowledge certainly can be a source of joy. And the sense of honor and a fulfillment and the power give a sense of joy. But for God, these things are not that important or not necessary. Do you think God needs any more knowledge? He is the king of knowledge. God needs any more power? He is the creator. He created. He has the power to create. What else power does he need? He has to run for some congressional seat somewhere? Do you think God needs money? Simply he doesn't, because he doesn't have any shopping center to go to shopping. There's no necessity of such thing. Then can you imagine, other than the money, power, knowledge, is there some other important element that can give God joy and satisfaction? Yes, there is. Most important of all, that is love. Even in our human affairs, although the money, power, knowledge is important, nothing gives one individual more satisfaction and more joy than love. When you feel someone loved me, when you love someone, do something for your loved one, that's the joy the greatest. But in case of God, that's all there is to it. But then, for love, it takes two. Two must be there to consummate love. Although you can self-love. Yes, you can self-love. But your self-love would not bring joy. In order to bring joy, love must come from outside, or you give to someone. In other words, give and take action, inner action of love. God, therefore, needs someone to love and someone to return his love. Even God, as almighty as he is the mightiest. Still, he cannot go beyond this principle. In order to consummate his love and joy, he needs someone. He needs someone out there. The responsive and the rapport can be established. This is the necessity of creation. In this place, God created men. And of course, all things. God and man, therefore, fundamental and a basic relationship between God and man is relationship of love. God as a subject and a man as object. The result of give and take of love is joy. But God also wants men to have love too. Therefore, God gave men lover. All things, nature, universe. In this case, the subject and object, man is the subject, nature is the object. The result of give and take action within men and all things is also love. And that result is joy. So ideal state, as you can see, between God and men, and loving relationship. The problem today, however, reality between God and man has not been ideal. How can you love God? And most of the people on the face of the earth do not even understand the existence of God. How can you love him? Even you knowing him. Even you do not even know he exists. For this reason, God so far in human history receives no joy. This is in a way, this should make a New York Times headline. They wouldn't do so, I'm sure. That God received no joy, but is brokenhearted. This is the tragedy of human society. We talk about the tragedy, but the most basic of all tragedy is the separation between God and men, so that there's no love relation between God and men, which will bring everything in jeopardy. This is the reason today men are trying to be desperately happy, but very seldom men achieve that happiness. I will tell you about that a little more later. So therefore, the human problem is not just a human problem. It is God's problem. The solution should not be just a human solution. It has to be a joint solution with God and men. So something that cures the heart of God. Then we can begin our search for true happiness here on earth. Now, I would like to go into the characteristic of God for a few minutes. It is our understanding that all creation reflects God's image and the characteristics. Today, man is truly God's mirror. In other words, man is at the image of God. When God looking at man, he should be able to perceive his own image. This was men and women supposed to be. But as I said today, that mirror has become a broken mirror. This is a problem. So that even God looking down and looking at his own mirror, that mirror has been broken, has not reflecting his own image, which will bring the true tragedy and sadness. We also believe, therefore, the observation of men and the universe reveal the characteristic of God. How do we know God? By studying the creation of God. This we call deductive method, scientific method. Even Bible, when you read Rome chapter 1, verse 19 to 20, St. Paul, the preaching the gospel among the Romans. At that time, as you know, the Roman has a religion of multi-God. Furthermore, to make things worse, Roman has visible God. They have a statue, God of Venus, God of Mars, God of beauty, God of war. St. Paul has a great deal of problem trying to show them the invisible God. Because everybody will say, well, it's simple, you show me your God. And St. Paul has no God to show them. So he said in Romans chapter 1, for what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them ever since the creation of the world. So they are without excuse. You are without excuse not to reject one God invisible, because he has shown into the creation his power and the deity and the characteristic. That was the argument St. Paul has made, which is true argument. So God and mankind and all things of creation, God in the position of the origin, mankind in the position of direct image, all things of creation is in an indirect image. And mankind is the final, supreme creation of God. So today, when we observe the human being and the universe using a deductive method, we can understand a great deal about the characteristic of God. One thing we want to show you in this CAUSA seminar, because there are many characteristics, but one thing in particular is very important because it related to future lectures. That is, everything in this universe that existed or created has dual characteristics. The one simple slogan here, God created no bachelor. Everything has a pair, or duality, or the double layers, which simply coming from dual attributes of God itself. Let me illustrate. When you read the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, it said, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Then God said, male and female, he created them. Become a plural. Not one anymore. But both are at the image of God. But within this one image, there's a male image and a female image. Together, create one perfect image of God. This is the concept. So we can see there's the dual attributes of God, and male and female. We call it horizontal duality. And the male and female, and plus and minus. So everything we see here, the duality, horizontally. First of all, man has a man and women. Animal world is a male and female. Plant kingdom, the stamen and pistil. Even the flowers is the two kinds. Even a world of mineral. There's the atom. Can be classified in plus and minus, proton and electron. So we have good scientific reasoning method. All these are the reflection of the creator, originator, God himself. God is like an artist. When he brings out his own art in a visible form, that visible artistic piece, the reflection of the author. Picasso can only draw Picasso. Beethoven, music, can only describe the Beethoven characteristic. So was the universe. Creator, artist is God. So we can see that God is within himself, there is a male and a female characteristic. When all these male and female characteristics united in cooperation or give and take action, it will take the perfect image of God. So in other words, what we are basically saying, nothing here on earth that God created that does not resemble the very nature of God. This is what we are saying basically. The another way of duality is the external character and the internal form. This is a little more sophisticated to understand, but not too difficult, because it's real. Everything has a double layers, two layers. One is external layer, the other is internal layer. The man is a good example. We have mind and body. One is invisible, mind, but real. And we have body, that is also even more real. This is not only true with men, but also animal. There's a mind and body. Although animal mind is not that sophisticated, but you know there is instinct mind. This is true with the plant kingdom. The plant even have certain governing mind, or law, you might call it. The sunflowers facing the sun in the morning, the east. When you look at the same flower in the evening, it faces the west. There's some governing mechanism, even in the plant. This is true with atom. There's a law, we may not call it mind, but it's invisible law or discipline governing the atom. Proton, no matter how much you're trying to convince that proton will never make a date with another proton. It'll only go after electron to be united. That's the discipline. That's the law. So this also comes from the very origin, God characteristic. When they are, again, united, give and take each other, that will become perfectly at the image of God. So when we have this external, internal characteristic of duality, dual character attributes, plus male and female horizontally, one is vertical, we call it, the other is horizontal. These characteristics, I try to put them together into one, because God is one. Then I come up with the beautiful, what would you like? Somebody look at this, oh, God is so beautiful. He looks like a beach ball. Yes, he looks like a beach ball. But I tell you, the real beach ball is this. Loving husband and wife. Inside of God this is the real beach ball. Example of God's own image. Because each man and woman has an internal character of mind and body, external body, and one is male and the other is female, united in love. This makes it truly the most beautiful beach ball inside of God. This is truly the purpose of creation. This is where God can derive his joy and satisfaction, providing that God is dwelling within them. Then this beach ball can become even greater beauty, even more beautiful, that we call family. Another bigger beach ball, family. I tell you, CAUSA believes the family is the first and the last institution God himself created. Family is the God institution. Today here in America, and elsewhere communism, of course, they're trying to destroy the family system. That I tell you, the direct challenge against God's own creation. Yes, family is the building block of the heavenly utopia, or kingdom of heaven on earth. I'd like to mention here CAUSA's view of the theory of evolution, because this has become so important, and the evolution theory today has become so fashionable. The other day I heard there's some teacher in Virginia, the Christian teacher, that taught the creation in the class in addition to the evolution. And the state, secular state, taking away his license to be a teacher. I tell you, there's an incredible battle going on between creation and evolution. What does it mean? The fashion of evolution is tend to the conclusion and comfortable with the thought there's no God. Whereas, when you accept the creation theory, you must accept God. Here again you see evolution versus creation is the God or no God battle. As you can see, the external observation of phenomena show that atom, mineral, plant, animal, ape, and human being. This is the evolution process, according to Darwin, evolutionized through the random selection. The externally observing what the Darwin has observed may be correct, but we must understand the internal meaning of it. May I ask, how could this 1920 airplane become Boeing 747? Just sitting in a museum through the theory of evolution? No. The most modern aircraft come into being from the Wright brothers' very first airplane by using experience, adding to it the creative energy, and come up with a new creation. This is how the 1920 plane become a Boeing 747, using the experience gained, adding into new, fresh, creative energy, then come up with a new thing that become a new creation. For that reason, atom to mineral, mineral to plant, plant to animal, ape and man, God uses the same principle, using a previous experiences plus creative energy. And this is the process of God's creation. This is how every stage of the creation is a new creation. We are not just evolutionized ape. That is not a human being. Ape is one level of God's creation. Human being is on a distinctive, supreme creation. Maybe God has used experience of creating ape in creation of man. That's all right. But ape is animal. God created a man with the new creative energy into a human being. That is what the divine spirit, which ape does not have, creativity that ape does not have, what eternal life that an ape does not have, what the relation between creator and man as father-son relationship which ape does not have. The man is the final, ultimate, and supreme creation at the total image of God. The rest of the creation are partially or indirectly reflecting the image of God, not total. Man alone is a total creation. I tell you, this ape would not become a John Wayne in a million years. According to the Marxist theory, the monkey with the tool, playing with the tool, devise some language, using his muscle and the brain muscle, become a man through the labor. You have heard from Bill Lay. Well, if that was true, then that process must be going on today, because that the rule of the nature, or the law of the nature, would not stop. That means all you have to do, creation of human being, is very easy. You go to the Washington Zoo, the monkey house there. You throw into a cup of tool, and waiting in front of that gauge long enough, you will soon see the human right demonstration inside the cages. But I tell you, luckily, that will not happen, because that process is absolutely a 19th century superstition. Ladies and gentlemen, this hour, I cover it with the sincerest heart, with the best of my ability, trying to describe in a common sense way the very existence of God, his purpose of creation, some of the characteristics of God, and critique on the theory of evolution. Let's come back next hour, one more hour for this afternoon, for another important discussion on CAUSA worldview. Thank you for your listening.
I hope that you were inspired by this important part of the CAUSA worldview. I believe that you will find the next portion even more inspiring. We want to consider some of the basic principles by which our universe continues to operate. This is a very stimulating session on the CAUSA worldview. Please be with us. I hope that these first two presentations, which you have already seen on the CAUSA worldview, have given you some insight into our perspective, and likewise that they've given you some kind of insight into the man, Colonel Bohi Pak. I think it's important to point out that the slides and likewise the lectures were personally prepared by Colonel Pak through many, many hours of labor. As a matter of fact, prior to Colonel Pak's effort, we did all of our CAUSA presentations only by Blackboard. I think you'll have to agree that these technological advances make a big difference. In this important section, we want to consider two basic laws which exist in our universe. One deals with cooperation, which is a fundamental law in the universe, and the second deals with a particular law which relates to man, responding to the personal responsibility of every human being before God and his fellow man.
Let's move into a very final session for this afternoon. I know there's a very intensive intellectual and spiritual exercises. And that's the way we want it. You did come here to work. And we have our own slogan. In order to defeat communism, we got to work harder than the communists. And that's at least my way of competing with communists. They work very hard for themselves. We work harder. Like Avis, rent a car, we try harder. We got to. So let's try harder. One more final hour. This time, light please. The CAUSA Worldview 3, the counter-proposal to the law of dialectic. This is the 4 fundamental of communism, and number 2, the law of dialectic. And we were going to expose the lies and bring counter-proposal. As you can see that the law of dialectic, they refresh your memory. They based on the understanding the universe is matter in motion, and the laws of motion are dialectical. But most important point I want to bring it out is that the law of dialectic is based on the assumption of there is no God. Upon that foundation, upon that assumption, the law of dialectic came along. Law of dialectics is based on absolute materialism. So, when God exists, what happened? Assumption was wrong. The law of dialectic is not true anymore. It is a false theory at the best. They say that the motion of the universe is dialectical. Therefore, laws of the nature are not, are dialectical. We say, CAUSA, the laws of nature are not dialectical. This nature, which is a basic, the Bible, where we derive the law, they said the universe is governed by the law of dialectical. We prove otherwise. This is not true. The laws of the nature are not dialectical. On the contrary, laws of the nature are the laws of cooperation. As you can see here, the plant kingdom, animal kingdom, they're constantly, harmoniously working together so that they can secure each other's well-being. For example, animal kingdom is providing the carbon dioxide to the plant kingdom, and the plant kingdom providing oxygen to the animal kingdom. What a beautiful way of assisting each other. Another example, the two kingdoms are exchanging elements each other. We derive our food from the plant kingdom, from the nature. And on the other hand, we gave the fertilizer, the vital element for the food of plants, to the nature. So these are the phenomena. One simple example of that the nature is under the laws of cooperation. The Marxism also says the laws of the society is under dialectical. We say the law of progress in human society is, again, not the dialectical, but the law of cooperation. Look at the relations between parents and children, teachers and students, employers, employees, consumers, and the businesses. the relationship of progress, making certain progress, is by the cooperation, mutual cooperation, not the confrontation. The one exterminate the other, bring the progress. So we, CAUSA, has the law of God, the laws of life and progress. That is the law of cooperation. Or another way of saying, give and take action. The give and take action, this is the law, actually, under God, by which life is preserved, multiplied. The nature is preserved and multiplied. And the progress of a society is come about, not the dialectical. In order to have a give and take, or the law of cooperation taking place, we must secure two conditions. First condition is the common purpose. We must find the common purpose to be united in order to have cooperation take place. For example, this particular seminar is one example. We are giving this seminar and you participated. Why did you come? Why we do this? There's some common purpose that will bring the mutual benefit. When there is a mutually hurting and losing something, there's no way you can get the beneficial cooperation. There must be common purpose and a mutual benefit proceeding. Condition 2, there must be two parties, subject and object. Not the subject and subject. They will do the confrontation. Subject and object. Subject already take initiative toward that common goal. Object already respond to that common goal. Then ready to give and take. The purpose of give and take action is to generate energy. Energy for what? Energy for life and existence. Energy for multiplication or regeneration. Energy for action or progress. The stuff in this particular hotel was built some years ago. The planner already knew when this hotel is built, there will be a utility bill. There's energy is needed to run this hotel. Electricity, water, steam, and manpower. So when you create something, it's already understandable. There is maintenance, must be kept up, and that must be paid. Energy must be paid. When God created the universe and man, he also knew in order to maintain the universe and life and multiplication of life, this universe takes lots of energy. So he already built in his plan to provide, to pay that utility energy, utilities. And that the method of providing energy to all the creation is give and take action. By subject and between subject and object. Give and take, unite. By doing so, it will plug into, we call it universal prime energy. There was the energy. That energy by which God created all things. By which God can provide the utilities for the universe. In a way, just like electricity comes from the power plant, all you have to do, plug into the power plant. There's a power plant of the universe, God. But God is not energy. God has energy. Pohe Park is not energy, but Pohe Park has energy. That we call the universal prime energy. The universe has to plug into it to receive that energy to maintain and make a progress, to regenerate. And that particular method of receiving the energy from the prime source is the give and take action between the subject and object. Let me go on very quickly several examples. Between God and if you have any problem with God, then put the substituted word God with the word purpose. Centered upon common purpose. Mind and body come together. Then they are united into men. By doing so, they will be plugging into the energy. That is God. And receive the energy from God. And a good man. Man is not necessarily always good. There can be evil purpose. The evil master. Still, this principle works the same. In that case, the united men between mind and body work the evil instead of good. Depending on the purposes will determine what that man will produce. Another good example is the give and take or cooperation between husband and wife. Primarily give and take of love. This is most perfect example. Centered upon God, husband and wife, pose as subject and object, give and take, that will bring perfect harmony, happy couple, and as a gift, children will come. Between husband and wife, when I talk about a subject and object, I become a little nervous. Who is the subject? Who is the object? But I have a perfect answer to that too. No problem. The answer is this. The subject and object is not set arbitrarily. Depending on the purposes, subject and object can alter. For example, when the Tom Word gave me a lecture here, I was sitting and listening to Tom Word. In this particular lecture room, he was a subject role. I was an objective role. When I am lecturing and Bill Lay is sitting and listening and I'm a subject role, he is objective role, depending on the different purposes. By the same token, in home, certain cases probably husband definitely take initiative. And in other cases, wife can take initiative. In my home, for example, I seldom home. I'm going around all over the world. My children never see me. Very seldom they see me. So the education and the taking care of the children matters. My wife is taking a subject role, and I'm taking response to that call. And that reminds me of one good American joke. Some friend who told me that he has a perfect organization at home. He's a perfectly happy husband. He said, very proud. So I said, what kind of organization do you have in your home? Well, we have a rule. Whatever the big things that I, as husband, I will decide. Whatever the small things, my wife will decide, make a decision. The perfect rule. But you know, in 30 years of married life, so far, however, no big things has ever come up. That's all right. You know, in that case, who is the subject? There is the government and people, again, the perfect example of give and take. The government and people are not the two opposites that exist for confrontation. In order to have the well-being of the nation, government and people must give and take, cooperate. The amazing thing is this. Even communist, Marxist, they proclaim their rule as a law of progress. The dialectical law is the law of progress. But actually they steal our law to make their own progress. For example, how did Lenin obtain the revolution? The revolution was the purpose, Lenin was a subject, the follower, and some soldiers and some workers as object, as a follower. They never confronted and exterminated each other to make a progress. Under the purpose, they joined together, working together, cooperated in order to bring down the revolution, Bolshevik revolution, successful. So as you can see, the communistic system today, even though they profess the law of dialectic, whatever the progress they are making under the law of give and take and cooperation, the law of dialectic is basically devised in order to incite the revolution and topple the government. There's no substance to it. It is truly a lie. This time, I would like to have one more example. That is, look at the nature. We have sun and planets. Definitely sun, solar system. Sun is a subject role, other planets in objective role. But there are two strengths. That is centrifugal force, centrifugal force. One is pulling force, one is pushing force. Harmoniously working together to create the perfect solar system and order. This is again nature. This is the most important nature, system of the nature, working under the harmony, cooperation, give and take, not the confrontation. So we come up with what we call ODU principle. God as origin, within himself, the subject and object. As I said, the dual characteristic within himself. One is the subject and the other is the object. Divided into subject and object in manifestation, creation. So every creation has image of God. Yet not total image. Only by uniting into union, they present the total image of God. Then they immediately establish rapport to give and take with origin, that is God. By doing so, energy flows. This is the principle that is counterproposal. This is the truth and solution to dialectic. At this point, I would like to mention the law of repulsion, because Marxism very frequently uses the law of repulsion, saying, look, this is the dialectic. Look at the nature. The law of nature is working under the law of the dialectic. We must not be deceived by it. For this reason, particularly in Central and South America, they were so deceived by this thing, it become very important to explain one word about the law of repulsion. Yes, we recognize in the world of magnetism or electricity, there's certain repulsion. Plus repels, another plus. Minus repels, another minus. Only plus attract, minus. This is law of the nature, and working distinctly. What is that? And what is the purpose? As I said, the plus and minus is the subject and object, the complementary relationship of give and take. By give and take action, they derive the energy. This is a very perfect complementary pair. Then another guy approaching to plus. This is in a way threat to the harmony, threat to the order and discipline, and unproductive. So in order to preserve the primary action of give and take, this plus A say to plus B, get out, move out. Not necessarily destroy another plus, but the meaning to that expulsion is that you are repelled now to move out to your own pair. You go find your own pair. so that you can also orderly organize productive, complementary give-and-take relationship. This is the nature. So as you can see here, law of repulsion is not necessarily destructive. On the contrary, as a secondary law, promote and protect the primary law of give-and-take action. It either support or facilitate the give-and-take action. So you can see how important the supplement, the secondary law is important in order to augment, support, or facilitate the primary law of give-and-take action. This is not the law of dialectic. Today, our world is in trouble because we have two masters in a way, God and communism. Illicit masters come into being, trying to take over the world, approaching God, taking God's position. Certainly God has no compromise. God say no to it. No to it actually to repel it to the elsewhere, to create its own pair for give-and-take action. But communism has no place to go, no other planet to dwell. So in this case, destiny of communism is degeneration, incineration, disappearance, and join what the world serve under one God. Then we can secure truly the peaceful world. The law of cooperation, the law of dialectic. We know that the law of cooperation is true, the law of dialectic false. Simply because the law of cooperation works under God, the law of dialectic under no God. And we already determined there is God. So law of dialectic has no place. I'd like to move on very quickly to one more aspect of CAUSA Worldview 4, counter-proposal to historical materialism. This is, to me, it takes the most of my energy. I'm trying to put heart and soul into this thing so that I can somehow make meaning clear to you, and I made a lot of effort. I know most of the slides even Bill Lay has never seen. It's a new try. Each time I'm trying. This is actually the area of historical materialism, the third element of 4 fundamentals of communism. We must expose the lies of historical materialism, and we must bring out the counter-proposal. But this is the most tricky one. As you know, historical materialism, it said history moves under the law of dialectic, and communism is inevitable. This is what the historical materialism basically saying. Now, for all of us today, as God-accepting people, we believe God governs the world and history by his providence. This is, most of the God-accepting people have no problem to understand God governs the world and history by his providence. That means his own plan. But problem we have, we indeed have a problem. The problem is God does not seem to exist, even to the eyes of many religious people. He seemed dead or helpless and in human affairs. As we already indicated this morning, God created a good world, and the reality, however, was the evil world. The work of God has been a restoration. This we already established, the understanding. If we establish this understanding, we have two questions, very basic. One, how did God's good world become evil? First place. How in the world a perfect God created perfect world? Something must be wrong. God may not be perfect in that case because that world became evil. Very legitimate question. Common sense question. Many Christians are asking. Another question. When restoration is His providence, why does it take so long? So slow? So undoing? Unfulfilling? Out of this question, our world is beset with confusion. First, brave people come out to say, God is dead. God created. Yes, we recognize. But He's dead. He's so old now. He's a grandpa. No more strength. Finally, He died. This kind of theory. Another, liberation theology. The new kind of theology. Actually kicking God out of the throne. Trying to bring the man into the center. We men liberate. From which Christian Marxism, ultimately communism, came into being. All these are the humanistic outlook of life. What is the communism actually saying? Here is the answer of communism. One, there's no God. Men created God. You created God. God never created you. Two, history moves according to the law of nature. It's inevitable. No matter what you do, what you say, it doesn't make any difference. The law of the nature will move history. What is that in the law of the nature? Dialectic. The law of history, therefore, historical materialism, which has come from dialectics. This law come upon the base. There's no God. This is the Marxist. Marxism is saying. They said it's scientific. At least one thing we have to admire Marxism is this. They at least have attempted the explanation. Convincing explanation. Of course, CAUSA teared it apart. But they at least tried the explanation, and so far, they have won the world by these lies. The problem today, the free world has presented no clear alternative to historical materialism. This is our problem. So the CAUSA come along. The CAUSA worldview has the answer. CAUSA maintain our basic foundation upon the existence of God. No question about it. This is our base. At the same time, CAUSA recognizes history is a prolonged process. We have to recognize reality. There's a great deal of unfulfilling in history. They seem to be very slow. Almost to the point many people can give up, saying that God has become helpless. We must recognize that. Then we ask the question, why? We must give the answer clearly. That answer is that man has free will and human responsibility. God created man with free will. And the free will comes with the human responsibility. This is why. Then first, many people say, how do you know God created man with free will? I said, not just mediocre free will, total free will. Well, for Christian, we have no difficulty. All you have to do, read the Bible, Genesis chapter 2, verse 16. After all the 6 days of creation, men and women are created. God pronounced, behold, it is very good. God was very happy. Normally first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day. After the creation, God said, behold, it is good. On the final day, sixth day, God said, it is very good. Then God gave men and women first commandment, which is described in these verses. God said to them, you may freely eat of every tree of the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. For in the day that you eat of it, you shall die. That the first time in the Bible, description of death, human death, is mentioned by God. You shall die. I'm not trying to bring you the attention to some theological debate. What is the tree of good and knowledge and evil? What is the tree of life? That is a theological debate. We're not going into that. What we're trying to point out here is that God gave men commandment, and a warning of death has been pronounced. At this point, man has two options. First option, obedience to the commandment. God say, the day you eat of it, you shall die. That means the day you don't eat of it, you shall live. Life. Certainly God wanted have people have life. So this is God's will. This is one option. The second option would be that man can disobey. They disobey the commandment. Well, heck with it. That is foolish. Nothing to do with me. I'm going to eat of it. If the man did so, result would have been death. This is certainly opposite of God's will. So this is option 2. Between first option and second option, man is given a free will to pick the one between life and death. One is life and one is death. How much more freedom do you want? This is truly total freedom. Man, you are going to decide your own destiny. Either life or death is yours. It's a total freedom. But at the same time, God knows man has a responsibility in this freedom. The responsibility, of course, God hoped and wanted the men have a faith and obedience and pick the first option instead of 2. Man with free will, God hoped to move to good world, obedience, and have life, no death. But free will worked the other way, move to the evil world. Again, God has nothing to say about it. Because if God can stop the men moving to the evil world, then he would curtail the free will. He would not have given that commandment first place. God doesn't have to give the commandment, waiting what the man would do. When a man is trying to moving to the evil side, then God will say, stop it. You can't do that. You go the other way. God can do so. But God did not take that route. because that is a curtailment of the free will of men. Then question is, why did God give men free will? He certainly could have saved a lot of headaches if he didn't give that free will to men. No problem. God can make the men free will without free will. Well, he did that with the tree. He did that with the animal. He did it with the star. Why not God did create men without free will? Well, God is love. And he created man for love. And man is not created as a robot or machine. Basically, God has two choices in creation. Either he can create person or robot. What's the difference between the two? Person, he has to give mind. Robot, only program. Man has to have spirit. Robot, no spirit. Man has a virtue, love, creativity, honesty, and courage, sincerity. These are human virtue. Certainly robot doesn't need that. Between the two, option is clear. God just want to make a robot out of men. He would not create the man in the first place. He wanted to have his purpose fulfilled, which purpose I already described in the first hour. Through love, he wanted to fulfill the joy. Robot would not give the joy to God. So God has no option but to create person. In order to give this mind and spirit and virtue to man, that man must have free will. So I concluded, for your facilitation of understanding, 3 reasons for free will and human responsibility. 1, man as co-creator. This is the highest blessing God reserved to give his son and daughter, men. In other words, God gave men the highest virtue of God, that is creativity, creative power. That's what makes God God. God wanted to share that power with men, creativity of men. Here we see God invited men in creation of man himself. This is really incredible to even imagine. God did not want to have men to be another product, manufactured. The two distinctions, one is manufacturer, the other is manufactured good. God did not want to have men to be in this category. God wanted to bring the men to be in this category. Co-creator. You cannot ask any greater blessing from God. God wants you to be co-creator and have all the creativity that God has. For this reason, I have some illustration. God's creation of men is somewhat 95%. Do not take figure seriously. This is a merely illustrated figure. What I'm basically saying, God created man with the potential creation, perfection, potential, but not as a final product. They gave the remaining 5% to a man's responsibility. Man is given this 5% responsibility under his free will. So that when 100% represent the perfection of man is achieved, who created 100% perfection of men? Not God alone. Even though the man contributed very little bit, man still contributed. For that reason, the perfection of men come under the God can call men that you are my co-creator. You created together with me. This is the basic formula. Man participated. I already told you that man participated as a joint venture in history. But far before that, God invited men to participate in man's own creation so that men become a co-creator. And that man's 5% responsibility must be exercised under total free will of men. That is truly faith and obedience is that responsibility. I have one simple illustration. Let's say there's a team of father-son bricklayers. They're going to lay 100 brick. Father bricklayer laid a 99. Then asking son, you lay final 1 brick on the top of that wall. When son fulfilled that brick, the father will say to son, my boy, bravo, well done. This wall is our co-creation between you and I. You are just like me. You are the co-creator. But unfortunately in history, that son failed to lay the brick on the top and dropped it. The God can come down and pick that brick up saying, my son, apparently you seem to have some difficulty. Let me do it for you. Certainly God can do that. But once God does that particular point, God is reducing men down to robot. No more children. Not a son. Not a daughter. Again, I have somewhat unclear picture here. I'm trying to depict football coach with a football team. Let's say you have an almighty coach. Philadelphia Eagle, or Philadelphia what? It's Eagle? Yes, Philadelphia Eagle. This coach is almighty, supposed, and could do everything possible within his power to bring the team to a victory. But do you know there's one thing that the coach cannot do? No matter however powerful, however miraculous player he may be, coach cannot play the game himself. That nullify the game. The glory would not go to the player. God is in a coach's position. God has to make men to do the job, so that men will win the title, gold medal, to be a co-creator of God. This is one reason. Second reason that God gave men free will is that man, as a child of God, we are created at his image of God. God is Father. Men and women are son and daughter. God has free will. Certainly his image must have free will in order to be total image of God. God is responsible. Certainly his children to be responsible. Important thing in this, we see that men and women are created at second self of God. The second self of God. For the reason the men and women are absolutely identical to God, except God is infinite, man is finite. God is spirit, man is physical and spirit. Only with these differences, the image of God must be 100% reflected to his own children, as much as your own son and daughter are not a machine. They're the human being with their own will. Don't you have your son and daughter have complete personality of their own, free will of their own? By the same token, God wants to have his children has a personality and a free will of their own. Third, probably one of the most important reasoning why free will is necessary, that is, to enable men to love. What does it mean? As I said in my presentation, the purpose of creation, God is going to fulfill the purpose of creation by reciprocation, give and take of love. Love fulfill God's wishes. Love will fulfill God's joy and give him satisfaction. Love is important. If there's no love, no creation. But then that love must be voluntary. If men, in order to love, must have free will. Free will and love come together. If there's a coercion, let's say I come down to someone and the gun point, sticking at the gun to the woman saying that you must love me. That is no longer love. That's a slavery. God wanted to have men to love God voluntarily upon his free will. During the Korean War, I was a company commander, given an order to take the hill, Communist Hill, and I have under me 200 men, brave men. I thought that was not that big deal. It's not so difficult to take the hill. But halfway up the hill, our company was totally bogged down by the enemy machine gun fire. It's coming like a shower of bullets. I called in artillery. I called in the fighter bombers, napalm, whatever. But the enemy is just firing and firing and firing. So for many hours, I've been admiring the enemy, their courage, their fortitude, their fighting spirit. Even the communist soldiers, what a great boys they are. We admire among ourselves, just like in the Civil War, even Northern Army, Lincoln's Army, admires in many cases Robert Lee as a great general, even though he was leading the South. When I see some bravery, even though they are the enemy, we admire. Finally, to make a long story short, we got the hill. We entered the bunkers. All enemy soldiers got killed. And I was in a sort of like a sincere virtue and a spirit that I want to pay respect to the enemy soldiers who are dead. Almost to the salute. That point, I discovered something absolutely incredible. I saw every enemy soldier's body lie there in the bunker, was every single one of them was chained by their master to their concrete floor. They were programmed to die there. The contempt, sort of a wrath came upon me. You don't call it that love, patriotism, love of the country. You don't call it that heroism. What I'm trying to say, the reason I'm giving you this story, no matter how long it might take God do not chain men to the concrete floor, so that upon the coercion we have to love God. God did not want to have that kind of love. Even though we love in that way, it would not give God any joy or satisfaction. Love must be voluntary. For this reason, free will is absolutely essential. If God don't give man free will, then total free will, God would not have created man first place. In God's creation, there was a God will, 95%, man's faith and obedience, 5%. Coming together, they were supposed to be the fulfillment of good ideal, fulfillment of creation, 100%. In the Garden of Eden, God will, 95% yes. Man's faith and obedience, no. By this reason, consequences are, therefore, the fulfillment of God's ideal never came. This is what I'm trying to say. Human failure, that began evil history. Human failure. In history of restoration, again, the same rule applies. The will of restoration, 95%. The faith and obedience, 5%. God ideal world, utopia, creation of utopia, 100%. The key here is the 5% of men's responsibility. Free will and human responsibility. Men hold the key to the consummation of human history. We men often blame God. No, God has been ever active. The day one of his creation to today. It is men, lack of men's response, that bring the prolongation of human history. In this case, man, upon his free will, united with the evil world, the goal of God is the restoration. And the restoration is a recreation. Same principle applies. So, again, in restoration, God gives men free will. Man's faith and obedience is absolutely necessary that man can return to the original ideal of God. For this reason, we have to learn one very important formula or criteria we see in our way of life, particularly Christian way of life. When you read John 3:16, very famous in the Bible, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. In Christianity, we know eternal life is coming as a gift from God. We cannot earn it. It's too much to earn. It's a God of compassion, love. The eternal life is coming to us as a free gift. But we must remember there's one condition. You must accept the Son of God. The Bible said, whoever believes in him, one might not believe in him, has no gift. Only those believes in him shall have eternal life. So you can see what I'm trying to describe here is not a Christian doctrine, it's not that point. My point is that God is giving you again free will. That God gave his own Son. To believe or not believe is 100% men's responsibility. Another vivid example. This is the biblical story. Jesus healed the blind man. An amazing thing Jesus did. He, as you see in a picture, the blind man was standing and Jesus picked up the dirt and put his saliva. It's relatively very mean act, dirty act, to make it mud and then pasted the eyes of the blind man. The blind man did not have a vision at that point. Jesus commanded, you go to the lake of Siloam, wash your eyes. At that point, this man has the two choices. First, the man could say, what are you doing, Jesus, to my eyes? It's so dirty. What are you doing here? Forget it. He can say that. Or, yes, my Lord, I have faith in you and I obey you. And the blind man was luckily was the latter. He obeyed Jesus, went to Siloam, a lake of Siloam, washed and seen. The point, he obeyed the commandment. He has seen. In other words, he received a vision. You can see the freedom of choice. The salvation or no salvation. Vision or no vision. The ultimate decision is upon the shoulder of men. Another example, which I mentioned already, was the failure of example of failure. That is Exodus. The people failed responding to God's will in faith and obedience. For the reason, you know, even Moses, so mad, he has now shattered his two tabernacle with the Ten Commandments onto the ground and into pieces. God never failed. Men fail to respond to God's will. This will bring the prolongation of the goal of human history. Human responsibility, faith, and obedience to God's will. As a conclusion, I would like to end with this lecture, the 3 steps of restoration of men. 1, men must find God, or discover God, or have God. Without God, no restoration is possible. 2, man must know his will, God's will. America today must know God's will for America. And 3, man must have faith and obedience to his will. You've been truly most wonderful, most attentive audience. Thank you very much for your listening.
The presentation which you have just heard is truly an important part of the CAUSA worldview. If we truly understand what Colonel Park is saying here, we have first of all the basis for a new metaphysics. Marxism spoke about conflict as the basis of the dynamic of the universe. Now we understand that to create things we need not conflict but cooperation. Secondly, if we understand the important perspective on man's portion of responsibility, we can be able to respond to an age-old question. French writer Albert Camus, for example, points out, if God is good, why is there evil? If we truly understand what Colonel Park is saying here, we have the answer. God cannot complete the fulfillment of his will without man's cooperation. This insight is most important. Now you have listened to the whole of the CAUSA presentation. There remains only one section, the CAUSA worldview on man. This part will truly inspire you. We have already spent so many hours together, and finally we come to our conclusion. This is actually the final session of the CAUSA worldview. We have decided, for convenience sake, to divide it into two sections. In this first part, Colonel Park will speak to us on the CAUSA worldview of man. I believe that it will be most inspiring for you.
Once again, I would like to draw your attention to 4 fundamentals of communism. 1, 2, 3, 4. We covered yesterday 1, 2, 3. And this morning I want to dwelling on the exposing a lies as well as counter proposal on count 4. What the belief of Marxism that man as a product of his environment. Man as product of his environment. So let me look at what they're saying. Here's a 4. Man is a product of his economic environment, and the Bill Lay in the first 2 hours covered beautifully about alienation. And basically what they're saying, economic alienation is cause of evil. For the reason changing economic system brings regeneration of men. So they come up with a solution, elimination of private property. That'll a cure-all, panacea, and ultimately bring ideal society or utopia. In this concept, there is a basic flaw. That basic falsehood is this. They're trying to bring the change in external system. Economical system is an external system. Their goal is regeneration of men. So actually they're aiming at internal change. Change in the internal character of men. Regeneration. They're talking about new men and women. They're trying to make a new generation, new breed, by changing external system. This is what they're talking about. In other words, change in effect. They hoped they bring change in cause. The problem is, they claim that theirs is the most scientific, but this is not scientific. This is pseudoscience. Why? As I said yesterday, cardinal rule of the science is the cause and effect. And this particular way of trying to change the world and the regeneration of men contradict scientific principle, which said everything has a cause. Cause brings effect. If you want to bring some change, the change must come on cause. So therefore, they are saying that the regeneration of men is possible by bringing change in economical system is not a scientific. It's a pseudoscience. From this kind of unscientific view, they come up with the incredible understanding of men. Let us review. The communist view, first, they look at men as advanced animal. This is their definition of man. Man is regenerated or improved or expanded from the animal, such as ape to man. What is ape? Well, what's the difference between ape and man? Maybe ape a little more dumb, man is a little more clever. Can you distinguish basically the difference between Chevrolet and a Lincoln, Continental Lincoln? Both are automobiles, basically, serving the same purpose of transportation. Only difference is one is a little luxurious than the other. What the communism basically saying, man is like a Cadillac or Lincoln, ape is like a Chevrolet. Basically, there's no differences. Man is an advanced animal. Secondly, they're looking at man as a matter in motion. Nothing better, nothing more. Man is not different from microphone, not different from object you see. The man is as a matter in motion. Man's spirit or conscience is illusory. This illusion. This kind of communist view of man, as you can see, where can you find the base for human rights? So you can see that the advocates of the human rights is really a facade, propaganda, the instrument, a weapon to disguise or deceive others. Their philosophy presents no base for it. There's no base for freedom. When a man is a machine, there's no room for freedom. When man is a machine or advanced animal, there's no base for creativity. And the most important of all, they gave man no room for love. So in a communistic philosophy, there's no room for love. They are trying to be so humanistic, humanitarian. They're trying to bring themselves in such a humanitarian, passionate cause. Actually, when you examine the philosophy, there's no room for love. How CAUSA view it? CAUSA, man is not just an animal. Yes, we do recognize man has a biological aspect comparable to all the animal world. But man is not just an animal. Man is not just matter in motion. Man is not just dirt. In CAUSA worldview, man is a divine being. Man is basically a spirit. This is a key word. Man is different from the animal because man is basically a spirit. And man has body as a vehicle. Body is not main. The spirit is the main thing. Furthermore, man is created for a definite purpose. We are not the product of accident or random, at whim. As we mentioned yesterday, there was a definite purpose of creation of man. The man is not happy unless he is functioning as he was made to function. Let me take one example. The beautiful virtuoso violin player played the violin. This instrument known as violin has purpose to be created. It's a necessity. The purpose and mission of violin is to create beautiful music. That's the purpose. Suppose they use this violin as a spanking rod. What's going to happen? It violate the purpose of creation, violate the original purpose. So it'll bring two things. It'll make violin absolutely unhappy. Not only that, it'll bring the destruction to the violin. Violin will shatter into pieces. So therefore, men, I can apply the same logic, the same, unless we are living for the very purpose for which we are created. Number one, we cannot be happy. Number two, it'll bring upon man destructive consequences. Then what is the purpose of creation of man? Man is created to love God, to create, to loving relationship with God, and to give joy and satisfaction to Him. This is man's primary duty for which we are created. Man and God, eternal loving partners, reaching out to each other. One cannot live the other. This is the God-intended relationship. God and man, relationship of love. That will bring joy to God and a joy to men. This is important. Not only we are giving joy to God, but joy to ourselves by this relationship. Furthermore, this since we're living up to the purpose for which we are created, this is the fulfillment of man's life. Today, so many people looking for happiness. But as you know, happiness does not come from the pursuit of happiness. The happiness is something like a rainbow. You saw the beautiful rainbow, you're trying to reach out to the rainbow, you won't get it. But certain environment created, then already you have a rainbow. It's coming automatically. So happiness comes in fulfilling life's commitment. Happiness is not a goal of life. If you're trying to have happiness as a goal, you won't get it. Happiness rather a reward. So what I'm saying here, basically, when man is living up to the very purpose for which we are created, it will fulfill our life, because that is our commitment, and it will bring happiness. Happiness per se cannot be a goal. Today in our world, so many people are desperately trying to be happy. And the more they try, the greater disillusion comes. Let us analyze man. The man has dual aspect, as we mentioned yesterday. That is, that image comes from God. We have physical aspect and the spiritual aspect. Physical aspect come under physical law. Spiritual aspect come under spiritual law. Physical aspect of life come for temporal life, where the other is eternal. This physical aspect is a mechanical and biological or animal aspect, where spiritual aspect is the aspect of image of God. Physical aspect is run under the dominion of instinct mind, whereas the other, spiritual aspect, come under the domain of divine mind. We must determine which is the master, which side of man is the master. Spiritual aspect is the subject. Physical aspect is the object. Now, this is the total aspect of man. So any solution upon man must take in consideration of entire aspect of man. Total diagnosis in order to cure this man. But that's that communism is trying to do. They totally deny spiritual aspect of man, which is subject aspect, and trying to devise the solution only on the physical aspect. It will not work. It never works. Would you kindly concentrate on the slide? What's going to happen? Look at this. They totally wipe out the most important aspect of man, and are trying to treat man only this one aspect, which is basically animal aspect, and trying to devise a solution to man through this aspect. You know it won't work. The concept for worldview on men, I would like to have 5 different points by which we want to emphasize a certain characteristic which become a counter-proposal to the Marxist understanding. 1, man is an image of God. 2, man is visible manifestation of invisible God. It is really supreme creation at the perfect image. So basically what we're saying, that invisible characteristic and an image of God manifested in visible form. That is man. As I said, man is God's second self. The dignity of man comes from this very point. Our human right, our divinity come from this. We are, in a way, a walking God on the face of the earth. The temple of God, and the Spirit of God that dwells in us. This is not an over-exaggeration. Man is supposed to live with this dignity, the manifestation of invisible God. This is the most dignified, the most beautiful, awesome responsibility and the blessing. I'd like you to concentrate to look at the slide, and whatever the thought come to your mind, please retain it. So far, what did you see? All the different color of skin, different ages, the male and female, men and women, young and old. What is common here? What is common? That is, we see here sons and daughters of God. That is what is common. All we are the children of God. That is common. We can only become a children of God when we have a realization we are the invisible God's manifestation in a visible form. Only difference is God is infinite. Man is finite. There's only one title you can go on eternity. I'm a colonel of the Korean Army, retired. The President of the United States, probably the highest title on the face of the earth. That would not have anything to do with our eternity. Only one title has eternal impact. That is, you are carrying the name card, Son of God, the daughter of God. John Doe, Son of God. Mary Canfield, daughter of God. That goes on eternity. But in order to obtain such a title, we have to have 3 qualifications, or 3 steps. The first step is that you've got to have a realization, recognition. You cannot be somebody even you don't know of. You come to the full awareness and a realization, recognition. Yes, I am a son of God, a daughter of God. Second, you must receive the recognition from your neighbors. Your immediate neighbors, it's your family, your wife, your husband, your children, your parents. They start saying, boy, he is really a saint. He is indeed the Son of God. He is indeed the daughter of God. Finally, you must receive the recognition from God himself. God pronounced, indeed, you are my son, or you are my daughter. Then you got this title. So that when we all consummate our life here on earth and uplifted into spirit world or upstairs, we leave that one tombstone, the what is greatest of all tombstone inscription. You don't need page after page accomplishment. You should be able to say, or you should leave the word in your will, my tombstone should be John Doe, Son of God, period. You cannot ask any more better life here on earth. You fulfilled, accomplished, and you are the happy soul thereafter. Four, eternal being. Man as an eternal being. This is Marxism. It absolutely has no idea. But the question in our mind is, how can we live eternal life? Some cases, some religious doctrine tells us that only because of a sin we become immortal. We have to die. If we eliminate sin, we're going to live here on earth forever. It sounds very good. I like it. I wish that could be true. But the laws of the nature does not say so. There's nothing that made our material is supposed to last forever. Different kind of fabric. We need a different kind of substance to, ourselves forever. So as you know, as I said yesterday, every creation is dual character, pair system, double layers. Our world is no exception. So therefore, we have here the physical world in which we live today. I would like you to understand there is a spiritual world, another identical world waiting for us. Between the two, the spiritual world is a subject, and the physical world is object. Furthermore, man alone is dominion over both worlds. The both world is God's creation. God gave only men to dominion over both creation. For the reason God gave men dual bodies, physical body, spiritual bodies. So what the physical five senses, we can have a domain over this world. Eventually we're going to be given the spiritual five senses, which will have domain over spiritual world. And our life will go on in that world forever. This is the original design. This is the way we live forever. But the important thing is that spirit world is the subject, original. This world is carbon copy. So many people have illusion today, particularly in this respect. Walt Disney create incredible illusion among the mind of children. There's a haunted mansion. You go to haunted mansion, there's a ghost coming out. That many people have illusion that the spirit world is something like a ghost world. This is absolutely not true. You think you are real here. You think you live real life. You think your meal is a real taste. You can touch your lovers. You can do things reality. But wait until you get there. The real of real is upstairs. This is a shadow. This is a carbon copy. This is merely a preparation stage. The real life is come in a spiritual form. One instance in the Bible, one day Jesus took the 3 disciples. They went up to the Mount of Transfiguration. All of a sudden, the disciples saw Jesus transfigured into a dazzling sun-like figure, shining like a sun. Robe is shining. His face is shining. Furthermore, the disciples saw there was a Moses and Elijah was having a conference with Jesus. Just incredible scene. So they were so shocked and amazed. They petitioned him, Jesus, let us live here. Let us stay here. What happened that moment? That moment, actually, God opened the spiritual eyes of the 3 disciples. so that they can have ability to perceive and understand the spiritual entity of Jesus and the spiritual entity of Moses and Elijah. Moses and Elijah died in a physical sense many hundred years ago, but in a God sense, they never die. Even now, they never die. Jesus never died. We all never die. But what I'm trying to say that the spiritual state is the real state. Should be our goal of life. The perfection of the spiritual state is the goal of life. After all, there's a physical state that will go away. It's like a vehicle. I'll talk about it a little more. This time, I'd like to bring to you number 5, the 3 stages of life, which is quite interesting, I hope. We live 3 stages, regardless. The first stage of life comes as the embryonic stage. We all live through about 9 months in the mother's womb. The mother's womb is like a first stage of life and a first universe we live. This universe is very compact. But do you know that universe is filled with liquid? Liquid universe. Then for 9 months we live in the mother's womb in a small universe. What do we do? What does this baby do? Yes, just he or she is not idle there. It's working and it's serving and doing something. What is it? Doing to prepare himself or herself to be ready for the next stage, terrestrial stage, this stage. So first of all, when you come out of this stage, environment changes from liquid to air. We breathe air here. Inside the mother's womb, you don't breathe air. Furthermore, you have to digest your external food by your digesting system. Here inside the mother's womb, you receive the nourishment through the umbilical cord. So, what this baby should do, that baby must prepare herself or himself to be ready for second stage. In other words, this baby must be preparing 2 strong air lung. Air lung. Without lung, this baby come into the atmosphere. What will happen? That will become a stillborn. The baby cannot cope with the atmosphere. So it's born dead. This frequently happens. The lack of preparation brings this tragedy. So for 9 months, the preparation inside the mother's womb is so desperately important. Now, same thing can be applying this world to next world. Many people today think this is the final. This is it. Let's have fun in this world. After all, after nothing more will come. That is totally untrue. There is another stage of life is coming. Spiritual stage. In the spiritual stage, most important thing is, first of all, it is not a material stage of life. Material has nothing to do with it. It's a spiritual fabric, we might call it. And first of all, the atmosphere will change. No longer you breathe in the world air. There's no such a thing air. Air is the part of the material. You breathe love. You breathe Spirit of God. The atmosphere is love and Spirit of God. What does it mean? Therefore, unless you are prepared to be ready for the final and a third stage of life, spiritual state, while we are here on earth, unless you prepare yourself with 2 strong love lungs, you won't get there. We can end up in stillborn in that world, which is ultimate, final. This is the most crucial stage of life man has passed through. In order to not to become a stillborn, we must actively work here on earth, prepare ourselves as much as the baby prepared inside the mother's womb to be ready for one final stage. then what is that preparation? This is the key thing. What should we prepare? Yes, we prepare love alone. Well, this is symbolic expression, of course. What I'm trying to say, we prepare ourselves to be able to cope with the love atmosphere, new atmosphere in the spirit world. God knew we need that. So God already gave us the most important institution through which we can experience love. Love of fellow men and the love of God. That institution, we call it family. The family is a God-given institution, here to stay forever, because this is a school of love. This is where we learn love, experience love. Let us look at the components of the family. There are God-centered parents. Then there's the birth of boy and girl, grown into men and women. And they become husband and wife, then father and mother, and have a children, son and daughters. These are the makeup or organization of the family. Why this organization needed? Why this particular organization is important? Through this setup, we can experience three most fundamental and basic love. First, parental love. That is, children experience first. Parents love children. This is most pure, unselfish love. We call it parental love. Then children began to appreciate the parents. They reciprocate parental love with filial love, from children to parents. The men and women grown up, they marry, become husband and wife. Then they will be among the two, mutually, they will be developing conjugal love. Parental love, filial love, conjugal love. The three loves are the basic, fundamental love. Putting all together represent the love of God. The love of God is something three love combined. But the love of God has one beautiful characteristic. We call it agape love. What does it mean, agape? That is totally pure, unselfish love. Here in our world, even a parental love, filial love, conjugal love can be stained, can be dirty, can be selfish. But God's love is absolutely agape love, pure love. So, here on earth, in a school love, in a family system, God intended for all of us to sharpen our love experiences more and more resemblant to the love of God, which is agape love. So in a second stage, terrestrial stage, we live and prepare this love of God, experience, lived. Then you're ready. You have no fear to going up to one more stage. All right, then what's going to happen? Look at the slides now. First two phases will eventually go. Only you will remain in a spiritual state and go on forever. How important that is. We look at more about ourselves, makeup of ourselves, analyze our own self. We have physical self. Furthermore, we have spiritual self. Where is my spiritual self? Where is he? Well, you don't see it. I have it here. You don't see it simply because you do not have spiritual five senses. But actually, physical self, spiritual self always exist together. This physical body is housing a spiritual self. This physical body is like a vehicle. Or, I take this analogy, it's like a rented car. It's my vehicle, rented. Rented from whom? Not Avis Company, not Hearst Company, but from the nature. Nature Company. What is my body? This is actually rented earth substance. I was born 7.5-pound baby. Now I weigh 180 pounds. Where about 170 pounds of weight came from? From nature, from food. So nature rented that amount of, in a way, substance, the ingredient, to me. And eventually I'm going to return it. But the reason this is important, because this body provides the house or the vehicle for my spiritual self. This both selves must grow. This is here on earth. While we are here on earth, we got mature. In order to mature, we need certain ingredients. The physical body needs air, sunlight, water, and food. At the same time, spiritual self also needs the food that is coming from spiritual side, elements of spirit coming from God, primarily truth and love. Between the two, they establish certain give and take relationship. Spiritual element is coming from the spiritual self of yours to your physical body. Physical body respond to live up to the spiritual element and in turn be able to return certain vitality element to the spiritual self. In other words, the physical body is giving certain food to my spiritual self to grow. So you can see both bodies receive the element or ingredient in the two places. Spiritual self, in this case, from God and spirit of love, and from the physical body, vitality element. So in other words, unless you're receiving certain healthy element from the physical body, your spiritual life will not grow. We call it, what would you call it? Just retarded, in a way, retarded. Some cases, deformed. The spiritual self can be retarded, can be deformed, as much as physical body sometimes has such unfortunate instances. Important thing is, what is that element? That element is love experiences. Why God gave this physical body? We received the love element from God so that this physical body can live it, practice it, by which you derive certain joy and vitality, enthusiasm. This will produce a great vitality element to the spiritual self. In other words, every good deed, unselfish deed, passionate deed, loving deed you live here on earth for the sake of others, according to the wishes of a creator, will make an impact to your eternal body, which is spirit. For this reason, every action of man is accountable with eternal impact. Man reaps what he sows. Man must live a moral and a responsible life. Man has no one to blame but himself. Because it's our own doing, own making, our own earning must be done here on earth for my eternal life. God is helping. And the Christianity, the Christ is helping. But the important thing is that unless you respond to it, you do something about it with your physical self, physical body here on earth, invest yourself, your life, for the sake of others. Basically, doing two great commandments that New Testament teaches. You love God with all your heart and mind and soul, one commandment. You love your neighbor as yourself, second commandment. This is not the kind of commandment that you just think in front of a TV set. No, get this body out of your door. Let this body do something about these two commandments. That's the only way we can return the greater vitality element to my spiritual growth. Then what happened? Time will come. We live fullest life here on earth by serving people, by loving fellow men, and by serving God and a loving God. Time will come, this physical self, to be returned to the nature. And spiritual self goes on for eternity. This is the structure or makeup designed by the Creator. Nobody can violate this rule, whether you like it or not. This is our destiny. So wise men and women are the ones who understand the principle and live it and invest yourself into it. When you read the Bible, there, the end, the dust returned to the earth as it was, and the spirit returned to God who gave it. This is the way it goes. The dust, borrowed from the nature, dirt, will go back. This flesh someday will become a dirt. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. It does not mean there will be no physical death. There's no really such a thing, physical death, inside of God. There's merely transformation. Because spirit, man is a spirit. And a spiritual life is primary. Let us think at this moment, few moments, about communism. Communism denies God. So, in the life of communistic way of life, in life of communism, there's no room for receiving any spirit, truth, love from God. Therefore, there's no room to give my spiritual self, give some spiritual element to my physical self. All these give and take relationship is cut off in the atheistic way of life. Communism destroys the family. This is a God-given institution, one institution that God created. Communism systematically destroyed the family system. In North Korea, there is what they call 살부회. That means father killing club, heroes club. Those who prosecute their own parents as a kind of reactionary, and they execute their parents, become a heroic children. They have a special honor, a special heroes club. In that kind of system, it's a total destruction of the family system. So the communism is promoting hatred. Why? They have to, because the primary and cardinal law is a dialectic. Dialectic said one party must exterminate the other. That's the survival, that's the progress. One must exterminate the other. Therefore, in order to engender your fighting spirit and, in order to exterminate the other better, you start out with hatred. Even from the children, therefore, in North Korea again, since I know it better because it's my neighbor, there's a little school children have a training of marksmanship. How to shoot the rifle. Very early days. The target, the bullseyes, are not necessarily, round, bullseyes as we think of. All the Yankee faces are the bullseye. And one child missed the target. I saw this in a film in Japan. They actually filmed it and sent it out in Japan. I saw it. The instructor come bang the head. Don't you know why you missed the target? Because you hate Yankee enough. You don't hate Yankee enough. Hatred. As you can see, in the God principle, this creates a permanent death. Permanent death. In this case, therefore, in the communistic system, spiritual self is already pronounced to die, death. In this life, you engage this type of life here on earth, then time comes to say goodbye to this nature, this world. What happened? This happened. You go on with permanent death. In this terrestrial life stage, again, let's say we live in absolute materialism, under Marxism, really become a hardcore communist. What's going to happen? When first two stages gone, there's not much to go on. Only blackened, burnt out, dead life. Man's permanent death is spiritual death. Physical death is a natural process of transformation. So, for what will it profit a man if he gain the whole world and forfeits his life? Apply to this kind of way of life. And finally, and Matthew 10:28, do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather fear him who can destroy both soul and body in hell. This is Marxism. This is communism. They're not only destroying the physical bodies, physical life, by millions. Most important of all, we come to realize that they exterminate our soul in hell. Communism already brought 150 million physical deaths. But more important, it brought billions of eternal deaths by promoting a godless ideology. Therefore, in the name of God and the name of humanity, communism must be stopped. Its physical and spiritual victims must be ended. Here we see another aspect of communism. We've been so far dwelling on the physical evils and barbarism they are working here on earth. But we didn't come to realize this kind of way of life promotes godless religion or godless ideology. The killing and exterminating the billions of souls into hell. This is even, in a spiritual sense, this is even greater, the most heartbroken consequences of communism. So you can see, in the name of God, it must be stopped. You can see that our primary goal, therefore, if you truly love your humanity, if you love your neighbors, your families, your nation, your world, how can we not to mobilize ourselves, do everything possible within our power to stop the spread of communism and the victim, physical, both spiritual. So we say in CAUSA, we call it, our movement is a spiritual way of fighting communism. We try so far political way, economic way, social way. But nobody really tried a spiritual way to fight against communism. But all others, in the name of good name of anti-communism, they have done so much, but no avail. Communism keep expanding. We got to come up with some kind of new weapon, atomic bomb. And I do feel the spiritual reality, understanding of the spiritual reality, spiritual way of fighting communism is going to do the job.
Communism kills not only the body, but the soul. Through Colonel Park's deep insight into human nature, we find the real threat inherent within Marxism. Because of this real spiritual threat, God-affirming people cannot acquiesce to Marxism. They have a responsibility to speak out, to do something because of this great threat. We've now heard the whole of the CAUSA worldview. There remains only one closing session, a brief synopsis of the CAUSA worldview, its purpose, its aims. This session will, in a nutshell, give you a very clear perspective of what CAUSA is trying to do. Join us for this closing session with Colonel Bohi Pak. Thank you.
Because spirit, man is a spirit, and the spiritual life is primary. Let us think at this moment, few moments about communism. Communism denies God. So, in the life of communistic way of life, in life of communism, there's no room for receiving any spirit, truth, love from God. Therefore, there's no room to give my spiritual self, give some spiritual element. We men often blame God. No, God has been ever active. The day one of his creation to today. It is man, lack of man's response, that brings the prolongation of human history. In this case, man, upon his free will, united with the evil world, the goal of God is the restoration. And a restoration is a recreation. Same principle applies. So, again, in restoration, God gave man free will. Man's faith and obedience is absolutely necessary that man can return to the original ideal of God. For this reason, we have to learn one very important formula or criteria we see in our way of life, particularly Christian way of life. When you read John 3:16, very famous in the Bible, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life. In Christianity, we know eternal life is coming as a gift from God. We cannot earn it. There's too much to earn. It's a God of compassion, love. The eternal life is coming to us as a free gift. But we must remember there's one condition. You must accept the Son of God. The Bible said, whoever believes in him, one might not believe in him, has no gift. Only those believes in him shall have eternal life. So you can see what I'm trying to describe here is not a Christian doctrine, it's not that point. My point is that God is giving you again free will. That God gave his own son. To believe or not believe is 100% man's responsibility. Another vivid example. This is the biblical story. Jesus healed the blind man. An amazing thing Jesus did. He, as you see in a picture, the blind man was standing and Jesus picked up the dirt and put his saliva. It's relatively very mean act, dirty act. To make it mud and then pasted the eyes of the blind man. The blind man did not have a vision at that point. Jesus commanded, you go to the lake of Siloam, wash your eyes. At that point, this man has the two choices. First, the man could say, what are you doing, Jesus, to my eyes? It's so dirty. What are you doing here? Forget it. He can say that. Or, yes, my Lord, I have faith in you and I obey you. And the blind man was luckily was the latter. He obeyed Jesus, went to Siloam, a lake of Siloam, washed and seen. The point, he obeyed the commandment. He has seen. In other words, he received a vision. You can see the freedom of choice. The salvation or no salvation. Vision or no vision. The ultimate decision is upon the shoulder of men. Another example, which I mentioned already, was the failure of example of failure. That is Exodus. The people failed responding to God's will in faith and obedience. For the reason, even Moses, so mad, he has now shattered his two tabernacle with the 10 Commandments onto the ground and into pieces. God never failed. Men fail to respond to God's will. This will bring the prolongation of the goal of human history. Human responsibility, faith, and obedience to God's will. As a conclusion, I would like to end with this lecture, the 3 steps of restoration of men. 1, men must find God, or discover God, or have God. Without God, no restoration is possible. 2, man must know his will, God's will. America today must know God's will for America. And 3, man must have faith and obedience to his will. You've been truly most wonderful, most attentive audience. Thank you very much for your listening.
Heard is truly an important part of the CAUSA worldview. If we truly understand what